Okay, this is going to be a little awkward today. I'm going to walk you through adjusting a square foot estimate from means, and I'll show you how to find your baseline there to adjust that with assembly pricing, which is what I want you to do, the process that I want you to do on your project, okay? The references we're going to be using today are RS Means 2016 and 2019 eventually to adjust it to 2019 pricing. And then we're also going to be using RS Means Assembly 2016. All three of these are posted on Canvas. And I don't know if you have a double screen, you can pull them up. I think I can push you through this, get you to understand the process. When we go through a template, we're going to use Roland Office Building. And when we go through the template, it'll be an Excel template. I'll post that at the end of this lecture. So if you want to take a look at that and see how I did it, that's great. If you want to use some of that template, you'll find that RS Means there's consistency with their baseline and what they put in their baseline. So you may want to start with my template and then adjust it to suit yourself for your project, okay? And I apologize at the outset. We're going to be starting and stopping. I'm going to be starting and stopping this tape to get different things on the screen. This is not going to be a typical PowerPoint. I'm going to have to walk you through the various templates and how I received or obtained the pricing that I'm putting in it. And that you'll understand a little bit more, just hopefully a little bit. We're going to be using, like I said, RS Means, the square foot pricing. I think this is a square foot book. And we're also going to be using RS Means Assembly with the 2016, which is this book. And again, what I've done on Blackboard, I don't have access to the library anymore. In fact, they're going to lock us out. This is Monday, the 23rd, and I received word yesterday afternoon, that we are no longer allowed on campus as of tonight. So I'm in my office right now trying to hurry up and get this done, because it's a whole lot easier for me to post this stuff from the internet service we have here on campus than mine at home. But anyway, if you want to pull these up, you can. You don't have to. They're all up there when you go working on your project. Essentially, you're going to start with 2016 databases, both the square foot database and the assembly database. And then when you get all done with that, you'll have to adjust that number to Greenville. And I think in many cases you may have to pick the closest to Greenville. On some of those, it's Columbia. Again, you'll see that when we get through that. Let's go ahead and get started, and let's take a look first at the RS Means square foot, okay? And if you look at RS Means square foot, it's broken down into a residential component and a commercial component. You may want parts of the residential when you look at your project, but it's predominantly single-family housing, so it really won't work. I think I've already posted, I hope I've already posted some residential material on Blackboard Canvas from last year, but if I haven't, I'll see if I can find some, okay? I may have some in my files, because you may need to take a look at the assembly material that's in the residential book. Again, they've got a commercial, Means as a commercial book, and then a residential. Anyway, if you look inside of 2016 on page 9, you'll see something like this. And what they're doing is they're sharing with you what this book has for baseline templates. And you'll notice here that So we're going to do rolling office, which is a one-story office. If you went to page 174, they have a template for an office. Let's do that real quick. And, well, to tell you what, before we do that, let me talk about this, the way this is set up, okay? On all these templates, the ones we just looked at back on page 9, all of these, every one of those is set up similar to this. This is their format, okay? And what they do is they give you a building type. They'll identify it. In this case, it's an apartment, 1 to 3 stories. Just so happens that some of this may apply to your project, but that's a coincidence and nothing else. But within each of those templates, your first page you come to is something that looks like this. And across the top is the square foot of building. And what they do is they give you different building sizes, okay? And again, if your building sizes and in there, get the closest one. If it's off the charts on the right as far as size, you may have to extrapolate. And then what it's also telling you is it's giving you a lineal foot adjustment for perimeter exterior wall. All that is saying, listen, that, and if you look down here below, it'll tell you what to adjust per lineal foot of interior wall. It'll give you an adjustment for story heights. We don't have to do that, and I don't think you've got to do that for your project, but it lets you start adjusting these baseline numbers at 2,000 feet. And the premise there is that the most efficient exterior skin is a square, probably. And again, it's a square or a rectangle. And if you have a skin that jumps in and out a lot, you're obviously adding more square foot of exterior wall, which is driving up the cost per square foot of the building. And that's the reason for these adjustments. For this project, you can ignore that. We're going to bypass that because we're going to go, again, beyond the square foot. We're going to use that as a basis and then add to it. And then they've got various different skins that you might want to apply, and also structures. In this case, you can do a fiber cement siding with a wood frame, and that's the price per square foot of various sizes, square foot cost of various sizes. And if you'll notice, the cost per square foot goes down as you get larger. That's to be expected, okay? You would expect that as you get larger and larger buildings, the actual cost per square foot should drift slowly down. Again, you don't need that because we're going to take the baseline and adjust it, but if you wanted to stop at square foot, at 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet, and you had an exterior or an apartment building that was close to 3,000, 30,000 feet, and you knew it was going to be wood frame and it was going to be some sort of a brick veneer, now you got a, let's back up. Let's say it was going to be wood frame and you're going to use a variation of cement siding and stone veneer. You might come over here and say, well, wait a minute. If I do all stone siding or cement siding, fiber cement siding, it's $1.50 or $158 a foot. If it's stucco or stone, it's $169. You may say, listen, at 5,000 feet, I'm probably looking maybe to split that, so maybe I'm at $163 a square foot. Real rough, okay? And you could stop there, okay? And as a developer, take that number, adjust it for the location, adjust it from national. These again, recognize all this information is national averages, which have to be adjusted locally. And since we're using 2016 database, you'd have to adjust it for 2019, which is the reason I gave you the square foot 2019. You can get the year-to-year adjustment factors. Anyway, and then they give you various adjustments down here that you may want to do. But again, since we're doing assembly or taking square foot as a base and then adjusting it, as you'll see here shortly, it's not necessary, okay? The second page of each assembly looks something like this. And what they do is they break it down into various groupings. And what they'll give you is the title of that group, the title of that grouping, and then they'll say, for instance, a standard foundation. They'll tell you briefly what it is. They'll tell you the unit of pricing. The unit cost for the slab on grade is $5.13. And this cost per square foot is now, it's $5.13. If it's 3 stories, a third of that. So you take, it's really convoluted. My point is, you only have one slab on grade, which is a third of the footage. So essentially, the cost for all the square footage for that slab on grade, the building cost of that 22,000 would average roughly $1.71. This one's kind of confusing, so don't really necessarily bother with that, okay? Because what they're trying to do is get to a cost per square foot down here, okay? They've got to convert that component to a cost of building square foot. That's all that's doing. Anyway, they'll do this for various things. If you'll notice when you get into it, this format, this layout is similar for all these templates, these baselines. So what we're going to do, starting off, is we're going to pick, and again, going back to page, this page right here, I should say, this page right here, we have 1-story office building, which on that stuff I gave you is page 174. It's not 174 because I only gave you sections of that building, but you should see on 174, you should see this, a 1-story office building. And now you're seeing the same format. And the second page is a breakdown of that, okay? Now the question is, which one are they showing you? And it's pretty tough to tell on this thing that I've given you, but to do this breakdown here on this page, they pick one of these, okay? Now they can't just take one because it kind of varies. They're picking, in this case, they're assuming you got a precast concrete panel wall and you got a reinforced concrete building. And this 195, they're going to show you how they got there, okay? So if you go back to this page, blowing it up now, you'll notice at the bottom here, it's 195 or 199. Yeah, 199.95. Okay? Now, the problem with this, and you wouldn't know this jumping off, is $200 a foot for this building, even adjusted for Greenville, might be 150, 170, is out of sight. Okay, so you got to ask yourself, does our building look like this? And it really doesn't. Okay, it looks more like, and the other options you have here are retail. It sort of looks like a retail store that has some finished office space. So if you went to page 2000, M360 on page 214, you should see this, which now looks a little bit more like the building we have. I mean, again, there's variances there, but it's closer. And if you'll notice, they picked out this one right here, this 116, 115, which is vinyl siding and wood frame. And that's how they arrived at that 116, okay? So what we're going to do today, we're going to start with this baseline template. And understand, all we have to work with, we're not builders. We don't have our own database. If you were doing strip centers or retail, you wouldn't go to meetings. You'd have a database internally that gives you a very good starting point. And then you would adjust that accordingly. A prime example is I did a lot of hotels. I had a couple of divisions that's what they primarily did. And very quickly, as we were doing essentially the same flag, Hyatt in Oshkosh is a Hyatt in Orlando. It's just the costs are different. The scope is roughly the same. The sites probably are different, but the location is predominantly different. Maybe the back of house. There's certain things on hotels that change, but not the rooms. The rooms, I mean, and I don't know how much you know about flags, flying a certain flag. I mean, there's a reason that every Days Inn or every Hampton Inn or Hyatt or Marriott you walk into, they look the same once you get in the room. That's because, and those standards change over time. But my point is, if you want to build a certain class of hotel in this day and age, this point in time, it's a Marriott. Marriott will hand you a book what each room has to have. So for hotels, roughly what, 80–90% of the scope is pretty well defined. So if you're doing a lot of hotels of a certain template, certain type, you've got a great database that says what they're worth, at least the rooms. And now you adjust that template for maybe site work, back of house, maybe exterior skins, if it, in fact, it is different. There's a little bit more latitude with that. I mean, they're worried about the inside. And don't get me wrong, they're worried about the outside too, but not to the extent that they're worried about the finishes and the look of the room. Hopefully you get my point. My point is, we don't have a better database than Means, and you don't have a better database than that for your project. So that's what we're using. And with that as a starting point, what you'll have, and what I'll put on the website for you on Canvas, essentially I recreated what we just picked in Excel. And I'll give that to you. This is identical to what we had before. You'll notice, let me see if I can find it quickly. This is that same 116.15, and that's what I have here. I tried to recreate this verbatim, okay? Now, so you've got a baseline. It's a retail shop that's close, probably the closest thing we have in Means in our database. So now the question is, how do you adjust it? How do you, and I'm going to show you some stuff here. I'm going to show you what's on the other side here so I can walk you through this. But don't jump ahead of me, okay? What I did is I set up, and again, I'll send you this whole template so you can use something similar or build on it for your project. But this is mean square foot. What I'm creating over here is mean square foot that's adjusted with means assembly. Again, both of these are 2016 databases. All right, so the standard in the template for RS mean square foot, they had essentially standard foundations, poured concrete strip and spread footings. I have no reason to believe that's not reasonably comparable to our rolling office building if we're in a conceptual stage. So I went ahead and transferred that over, square foot of slab on grade. And notice now, I've actually had to determine the actual square footage of this building. And by my count, Roland is roughly, it's got 56 or 5,500 square feet of enclosed space and 671 feet of overhang. So total, it's 6,177 feet. Now, to deflect any of you experts out there, expert estimators, I recognize that the overhang stuff, if you were doing this for real, you might give it half or 2/3 credit for footage. I didn't do that. I wanted to make it simple for everybody. So please bear with me. We're working now with a building that has 6,170 square feet. So if that's the case, what we're saying here for the foundations on Roland, I say fine. 216, that's 6,171 feet. We got 13,342 feet in foundations. Okay? And the cost per building square foot is 216, same as the slab on grade. We don't have special foundations. So I didn't transfer anything over there. Slab on grade. You'll notice there that the what's in mean square foot 2016 is a 4-inch reinforced concrete slab with Baker Berry and gravel base. It looks good to me. I have no reason to me to change that. Again, so what I did is I took that 556, put it over here, took it times 6177, again got 34,344. Okay, everybody with me so far? Now, the next step here, there's two other components, basement excavation and basement walls. We don't have either on roll. And you can see there was what? Roughly what, $4.20 in that baseline rolling, baseline RS means for a retail office, retail shop that we don't have. So literally, they're not NA means non-applicable. So I put nothing. I slid nothing into it. This is going to be winding up our estimate for RS means square foot adjusted by RS means assembly to make it more building specific. In other words, we know more about our building, and we know that it doesn't exactly marry with RS means square foot template, this one over here. So we're adjusting it. Same thing with the one you're going to do on your project. All right, now let's take a look at the superstructure. RS means, and again, let me see if I can hold this for you. I don't want to hold all that. Okay, let's get started again. All right, we've finished the substructure. Now let's go to the shell, okay? The shell, again, they've on this building, they've used wood trusses and columns, and they have a total of, I don't know, roughly $8 plus or minus. We don't have that. We have a steel roof, okay? And we not only have a steel roof, we have a metal. We know that it's a standing seam metal roof, okay? And we need to adjust this number. And let me get to the RS means book. Hold on a minute. Okay, let me try to explain this to you before we get started. If you look at the assemblies book, and assemblies are essentially, they give you pricing on, I guess I need to close down my email. Anyway, when they give you pricing on your, the assembly, an assembly means, for instance, an assembly might be a 5-inch drywall partition with drywall each side and wood framing. And they would give you a square foot price or a linear foot price for that partition. It's called an assembly because it's got a number of components that comprise the assembly. And what you need to think about when you go to the means assembly book is they show you how they construct that assembly. In other words, you can go in there and see this number, which is stairs, cast in place concrete with landing and 12 risers. And what you'll see are these numbers, okay? You'll see these summary numbers, but how they got that number. In other words, concrete, cast nosings, railing, wall railing. I mean, they'll tell you certain components of how they assembled that assembly. So if you pick an assembly, let's say you pick an assembly and this one happens to be for, looks like a foundation wall cast in place. Let's just say you picked an assembly and you found what you liked, but it wasn't 3,000 PSI concrete, or let's make it easier. You didn't have to finish the walls, break the tie. That's a tough one for you to do too, because maybe this would be easier. Yeah. Let's say you have that wall and you like this assembly price, but you know it's going to be 4,000 psi rather than 3,000. Well, you know there's 0.074 cubic yards per lineal foot in the wall. So if you want to know what they're paying for a yard of concrete, you can divide that out. And let's just say it's 150 bucks a yard. I got a calculator, right? Let me see what it is. If my calculator's not wrong, it's saying it's $118 a yard. And let's just say you're buying 4,000 and you know it's 130 a yard. You can adjust that number and change that, okay? In other words, again, tailor it more and more to what you have. And you're going to be faced with doing that time and time again, having to mix and match these assembly prices, because you may not find exactly what you want. And if you go to this system component breakdown, you can actually see how they built up the assemblies. And I'll show you a little bit more in a minute. Okay, let me continue on now. Let me show you, and again, I've adjusted this over here, and let me show you, and what you're seeing on this right-hand column starting at end, I'm trying to give you some notes to let you know what I'm doing here. So in this case, I'm saying go to page 110 of the assemblies pricing, which is this. And I think I picked what? 112, 4900. So it's right. It's B1 12, 112, 4900, which would be this one right here. And I picked the 882 and the $1.27. Let's see if that's what I have. Yeah, okay. So that's what I have here. Now, notice I backed off $2.35. Well, let me show you how I did that. If you looked at this, the way they built this up, they have roughly $2.35 in there for wood, for metal decking. We have a standing seam metal roof. So what I did is I left, this has the metal roof and the framing plus the columns. I backed out the metal deck because we're going to go down here later on when we get to roofing down here and put it back in, okay? So that's how I got the 174 or 774. All right? Everybody with me? If you want to know how I arrived at these numbers, these unit prices, you need to go to, I'm trying to point you where I got them. And page 110 is not the 110th page of that PDF that's posted. It's page 110. Again, recognize I only pulled certain sections or certain pages out of that whole book. It's like 500-600 pages long. All right, let's carry on here, okay? Let me open this up and hide this for you. Okay, let's take a look at this now. All right, the roof. Roof construction, that's just the framing. We're going to have, I think down here, yeah, we have roofing down here, okay? So we'll come back to that in a second. Now, on the exterior walls, and this is where it's going to get dicey for you on your project, okay? You have to do some takeoff. And this, the baseline here is vinyl on wood studs. That isn't what we have. All right, and on Roland, I actually took and I had to break down the walls by elevation, and I've identified what I would consider, what I think are the square footage of all these various types. And then for each one of those types, 4-inch brick on 2x6 metal stud, go to page 163, that number, and that's what I use. That's how I got the $24 a foot, okay? And that $24 a foot divided by total footage is that's how much we spent on the brick wall in the south, but you divide that by the total footage of the building, this 6117, and that's how you get building square foot. And my point is, these notes over here share with you how I arrived at these unit prices. And I don't know that we need to go through them all today. I think those you can probably push through yourself and I may have made a mistake here or there. The philosophy is the same that we went through on the floor construction for the superstructure. And all we're doing is we're saying, nope, that's not any good. This unit price and the type of material. What we have now is this. Okay? Now you go down to windows and you have a similar problem. Outward aluminum projected, we don't have that, okay, on 20% of the wall. We have storefront and a few windows. Again, so what I did is figure out the square footage. I arrived at a unit price to get a total price and then a building per building square feet. Again, I didn't use that. I took that as a baseline and said, wait a minute, it doesn't work. Update it. The exterior doors. There, they assumed, I don't know, it's so much per unit, and I don't know where they got. I guess they assumed just one unit or one aluminum entrance door. We have, by my count, we have 4 metal entrance doors and 3 storefront doors. And again, there's different unit prices for each. If you want to know where I got them, go to the assemblies book, the 2016 assemblies book, and pull out that number. Again, once I had the unit, took it times the quantities, and that's how I get a total price, which equates to a building square foot. All right, now roofing. Remember, we took the metal in this assembly price up here, the structure. All we have in this number is the framing, columns and the framing. We took the metal out because we have standing seam. I put it back in here. So now we've got roughly 6,171 square feet of roof. I pulled a unit of 1625 for, I think it's for standing seam metal roof, which is on that page, okay? And I also added in insulation. This roof is insulated. So I took that unit from that page, 270, again, took it times the quantity we have. So now rather than what we had up here, which was, hell, I don't know, what was it? Let's see here quickly. They had roughly $2.35 in there for the metal and apparently no insulation. We've got a project that has insulation and it's got standing seam. So now we've drastically bumped this up. And if you look at this, for this job, this is a significant number, okay? All right, the interior, all they did in the baseline, if you see a blank over here, in other words, this was not on, if there's nothing here, I've added, okay? For instance, if you looked at RS means, you wouldn't see that. You wouldn't see that. And you wouldn't see, I don't think, you'd see pieces of those, okay? What I did again was take it and upgrade it, okay? So they put a number in for petitions, real ballpark, okay? Well, we know what it is. You can do takeoff on that, right? And what you're looking at here is the level of takeoff I did to arrive at petitions. Here's what I wound up with square footages of each one of those, and here's where I picked, a unit price, okay? The interior doors, they had a very small amount. I went ahead and picked a unit unit price, I think I picked solid core with plastic laminate finish. I forget. Go to that page, you can see what I picked. We've got 13 doors, and that's how you got that price, okay? And that equals $1.32 a square foot. We don't have stair construction, so I didn't transfer that over. Fittings, toilet petitions. I didn't, frankly, like what they did there. Let's see what I did. Okay, I think I figured out what I did here. On plumbing, if you looked at the baseline, that's what you'd see. What I did is I think I adjusted that. I didn't like that particular one. It was a square foot number, or I don't know, each. I don't know how they arrived at 2. What I looked at was the space. There's part of that space is finished out, and part of it's open tenant. So what I did is I picked a finished restroom, and again, these are getting a little tougher for you to get, but there's a finished restroom, I believe, for fixtures. If you go to the back, page 285, and it was, I had 3 what I called fully, and I think there was a mix and match here, but approximately 3 restrooms with a number of fixtures. And I picked the one with $6,100 a restroom. I had 3 restrooms. And then the open space, what I did is I guesstimated, okay, well, we're not going to put the fixtures in, but we still have to rough it in. So I went ahead, I think I took, I don't know how I got to 29, maybe the waste from the example. I don't know what I did there, but just realize and I'm not going to hang you up on your project, but recognize in this case, we have 2 different types of finishes. So I tried to bear that in mind, all right? We're talking small dollars, so if I made a mistake, they're a big deal. Domestic water, I assume that's with above, okay? These numbers included both the intake or the service and the fixtures themselves. Rainwater, they threw a number at it, rainwater drainage. And I got to tell you here, I figured the lineal foot of gutter we'd have on this job, and I did a swag. A swag is a scientific wild gas, okay? And there's nothing wrong with you at this juncture. Go to Google and see if you can get a cost per lineal foot of gutter and, with downspout. I mean, all you're trying to do at this point, rather than starting at 5,000 feet, you're trying to get down closer to what you have on your project off the baseline that you have, okay? All right, water supply, or HVAC. Let's see what I did here. If you picked up RS means for this template, all you see is this. Let's see if I change that in. All right, I've broken it apart. I looked at it in two sections. For State Farm, I went, and again, I picked a different unit, page 329, that number there, and I said, okay, for State Farm, that space, it's going to be $10.72 a foot. I've got 2,500 square feet. For the open space, I just assume roughly 65% of that number, okay? Again, my best guess. You may have better insight. If you were going to do this for real, if this was your money as a developer, or if you were doing it for a developer, if you're a contractor, you'd probably reach out to a subject matter expert on this. You'd probably reach out to your favorite, HVAC contractor and get their thoughts on it. If you didn't have a good database, you might reach out to them. And that goes for any of these things, okay? But contractors, at least what we did, and I think we were normal, if we didn't have a good a database internally on a certain element, we'd reach out to subject matter experts. If we had a storefront that really was somewhat unique, hey, call the experts. What's it worth? Same thing with plumbing or HVAC or special finishes. I mean, they expect to be called. In fact, many of them like to be called because their attitude is if they can help you get a job, hopefully they'll be in a pole position too. Anyway, that's how I came up with those numbers. Fire protection, by my evaluation of the documents, there is no fire protection, so I didn't put any in, okay? Electrical, if you picked up means, you'd see this, and I think I changed that to that. So now, again, I broke it into state farm and open space. And what you're seeing here, this note here, use square foot for office. You remember that first office we looked at that was $70 a foot or whatever it was? I went back to that template and said, wait a minute. The cost per square foot for electrical is probably closer to this office template. The one that wasn't to retail. Again, remember it was, if I can find it for you. Let's see here. It was, remember it was this one, right down here. And if you go to that template, you'll find that the cost per square foot for electrical distribution is $5.17, okay? And then what I did is I used the retail, assuming the open tenant space was probably closer to this template, I used that 283 for the open tenant space. Again, I'm just giving you my logic. I'm not saying it's absolute. Some of you may come up with a different logic. I'm not here, and on your project, I'm not going to second guess. What I want you to do is go through the process. Because if you're going to be a contractor, you're going to be expected to do this. And again, recognize you'd have a better template to work off of than RS means, but we use what we have, okay? All right, for lighting, that's what you'd see. Again, I can hide that. You'd see this. What I did again, I went back to that square foot cost on that office building, that one story on page 174, and it was $12.90 for lighting and branch wiring. I didn't, and this may be a mistake on my part, I assumed that the rough end for the lighting here was back in here, okay? Back in this number. That may be an invalid assumption. And you look, if you were doing this yourself, you might want to put in there some minimal, maybe a third of that, maybe a half of that number. And I certainly wouldn't argue with you. Communications. This again was what's on RS means. I went back to that 174. Because again, I thought that the electrical and the mechanical, or at least some of these systems, certainly the electrical, were more appropriate to use that 174 template than this retail template. Okay? All right, equipment. Let's make sure I didn't hide anything. It has nothing in the base. Let me see if I had anything. I didn't. Special construction. I don't believe I actually added anything there. Didn't. Now, building site work. In the baseline, it's not there. All these templates, all these square foot templates, do not include site work. And the reason for that is site work's generally unique and needs to be calculated for your own job. And that's true for this project for you. Okay, so what I did, I added some more information here. I went ahead, and this is a scientific, you know what, I put for our job, for that rolling, I put down 25 grand. That may be high, low, or in between, I don't know. I took off sidewalk, the square footage of sidewalk, and I went to means, that page, and got that cost per square foot to get that. Paving, I went, there's 22 stalls in a job. I went to that page, got a price per stall of what I thought was a reasonable asphalt mix for this job to get 27, and then Landscaping, again, I just threw a number at it, and then lighting. I assumed there was 4 lights, and I forget where I got the 2400 a pole, but that's how I got to 96. If you add all this up, this column up, now rather than $86.04, I'm at $99.78 as a base. All right. Now they've added, if you'll notice in means, this is what they have. Okay, they add 25% for contractors' fees and 8% for architectural fees, and that's how they get the 116. Let's see what I did here. All right, what I'm suggesting you might want to think about, I mean, I went ahead and put 15 and 10. 15 for overhead, and this is 10 for fee. I mean, this would be overhead, and then this is fee. You might want to adjust that. I mean, you have contractors on your teams. When you look at your project downtown, use what you think is reasonable. I personally think those are high for the job you're looking at. If I had to peg the job you're looking at, I would put overhead at 7 to 10%, and maybe fees at, I don't know, 6 to 10. I mean, maybe at best, 10 and 8 or whatever. It wouldn't be 15 and 10. And we don't have architectural fees, so I didn't include that. Now, which gets you down, if you're on the template at 116, it gets me down, adjusted now to 126.22 per square foot national average in 2016. This next line, I adjusted it for Greenville, and again, I think there may be a Greenville in that Means book for a location adjustment. But based upon adjusting it for Greenville for 2016, I get $106.03 a square foot. If I adjusted 2016 to 2019, this is a relative cost. This is a relative cost of 2016. This is not 176 is a cost in 2017 in Greenville, and then or Columbia. And then 187 is 3 or 4 years later in Columbia. So I did that ratio and multiplied it times that, and now I get $112.51 a square foot. Adjusting this template from national average to Greenville, and from 2016 to 2019, and from their template to a template that more appropriately matches what we have. And we get roughly $700,000. Now, what I'd like you to do for your project is this same approach. Obviously, your template will be one that's an apartment building. I don't know that you can find, I think there's probably student dorms. I think you're going to find those are not appropriate. It's kind of like this office building 174. I think they need to look for apartment buildings. And I think there's various options there. If you go back to, means this is 2016, but I'm sure 2017 and 19 are the same. If you take a look at this, and by the way, you need to start out with 2017 again, because if you start out with 2019 square foot template, use 2016 assemblies to update it, you're mixing and matching. You're better off pricing your job, your project, at 2016, because you have both the square foot book and the assemblies book. And now once you get that, adjust it for Clemson, South Carolina, or the closest city there too, and adjust it for 2019, based upon what we talked about the previous lecture. But your options there might be 1 to 3, 4 to 7. I believe there's schools in here. I think dorms. Yeah, college dorms. You can look at them, but I don't think they're probably. I think my guess is these are closer to what you have. I'm going to throw, I'm going to see if I can find that residential book, and if nothing else, you can use it for some of the interior finishes, because I think the assemblies pricing in a commercial book are not going to have what you need to outfit a room. What I would do also if I were you at this stage for your project, if you haven't done it already, I would look at the structure and the skin in its entirety, and then I'd probably price a room based upon room. In other words, you have, I don't know, what, 6, 8, 10 different size rooms. If you get the interior finish price of each room type, it's just a matter of multiplying the times of rooms of each, and you have the interior finishes. Add the commercial space to that, and you have the interior pricing probably as simplistic as you're going to get. Saves you a lot of takeoff too, rather than taking off the entire interior work, take off per room. Now, the only thing you may have to factor in is corridors, because I think I haven't looked at it lately, but I assume that you have rooms both front and back, but you can get close, okay? So suit yourself. I mean, you can take off every lineal foot of partition on every floor, or you can, do it by room type, by apartment type. Anyway, that would be my suggestion. I would encourage you, if I've lost you halfway through this lecture, go back through it again. If I have made some inadvertent mistakes that have confused you, maybe we can talk about them at the Zoom meeting. Hopefully, walking you through this, you understand the process. And again, you need to pick a template that closely matches, as close as possible to what you have for a project now. In the 2016 square foot book, pull the template out of that book, and then take the assemblies and book 2016 and update that or adjust it to better fit your particular job, both square footage of unit, and then also the type of the unit. Okay. With that, I hope this hasn't been too confusing. I'm going to post this template. In fact, I'll post it unhidden. So just recognize when I'm saying, when you don't see anything in these columns here, that means I've added all that stuff. Okay. When you see a number here, that was in the original template that let us get to this point down here. Okay. But I'll go ahead and unhide every row on this and then post this Excel file. So you can, you're welcome to use this as a template or a starting point, at least for this stuff, okay? You can obviously, this would all be different. You'd have to do it for an apartment. And maybe this changes too. I don't think so, but it might. But anyway, this may help you a little bit in streamlining what you're doing, okay? All right, hope you're having a good week, and I don't know where you're hiding out now since we're locking you off campus, but I trust you have access to an internet and you're going to be able to see this particular video. Okay? Have a great day.